Ancient Rome was a civilization that stretched across continents and centuries, a vast empire that began as a small city-state on the banks of the Tiber River and grew to encompass much of the known world. To understand the legal practices and punishments of this remarkable civilization, we must first step back in time and immerse ourselves in the rhythms of Roman daily life, where law and order were woven into the very fabric of society. The Rome of antiquity was a place where marble columns reached toward azure skies, where the scent of olive oil and fresh bread wafted through narrow cobblestone streets, and where the gentle murmur of fountains provided a constant, soothing soundtrack to daily life. Picture yourself walking through the Forum Romanum on a warm afternoon, feeling the smooth stones beneath your feet, worn by countless generations of citizens, merchants, and visitors from distant lands. In this ancient world, time moved differently than it does today. There were no clocks as we know them, no rushing schedules or urgent notifications. Instead, Romans marked time by the position of the sun, the changing of seasons, and the natural rhythms of agricultural life. The day began at sunrise with the gentle call of roosters and the soft shuffle of sandaled feet on stone pathways. Citizens would emerge from their homes and apartments, some modest, others grand, all part of a complex social tapestry that defined Roman civilization. The legal system of ancient Rome was as intricate and fascinating as the empire itself. Roman law, or jus civile, was not merely a collection of rules and regulations, but a philosophical approach to justice that would influence legal systems for thousands of years to come. The Romans believed deeply in the concept of order, in the idea that society functioned best when everyone understood their place and their responsibilities within the greater whole. Roman society was structured in layers, like the floors of a grand building. At the top were the patricians, the noble families whose ancestors had helped found the city. Below them were the plebeians, the common citizens who formed the backbone of Roman society, the farmers, craftsmen, merchants, and soldiers who kept the empire running. And at the bottom were the slaves, whose labor supported the entire structure, though even they had certain legal protections and paths to freedom that were unusual for the ancient world. The Roman home, or domus, was the center of family life and legal authority. The father of the household, the pater familias, held absolute legal power over his family, including his wife, children, and slaves. This power, called patria potestas, was both a privilege and a responsibility, as Roman fathers were expected to guide their families with wisdom and justice, serving as the first line of legal authority in Roman society. Roman houses were designed around central courtyards called atria, open spaces that let in natural light and fresh air. These courtyards often featured small gardens with herbs and flowers, fountains that tinkled softly throughout the day, and comfortable seating areas where families would gather in the evening to discuss the day's events. The walls were often decorated with colorful frescoes depicting scenes from mythology, history, or daily life, creating an atmosphere of beauty and tranquility that helped Romans feel connected to their rich cultural heritage. The Roman day began early, often before dawn, with a simple breakfast of bread, olives, and perhaps some cheese or honey. Romans valued simplicity in their morning meal, believing that a light start to the day promoted clear thinking and good health. After breakfast, citizens would venture out into the city to conduct their business, whether that involved visiting the markets, attending to legal matters, or participating in the complex social networks that bound Roman society together. The markets of ancient Rome were sensory experiences unlike anything we know today. Imagine walking through the Subura, one of Rome's most vibrant neighborhoods, where the air was filled with the calls of vendors selling everything from spices imported from distant India to fresh fish caught in the Mediterranean. The scent of cinnamon and pepper mixed with the aroma of fresh bread and roasted meat, while colorful fabrics from Egypt and silk from China created a visual feast that delighted the eye. Roman citizens took great pride in their legal traditions, viewing their system of laws as one of their greatest achievements. Unlike many ancient civilizations that relied on the arbitrary decisions of kings or priests, Rome developed a complex legal framework that emphasized precedent, evidence, and reasoned argument. Roman lawyers, called advocati, were highly respected members of society who studied for years to master the intricacies of legal procedure and rhetoric. The Roman legal system recognized different categories of crime and punishment, each carefully calibrated to maintain social order while reflecting Roman values of dignity, honor, and justice. Some punishments were intended to reform the offender, others to deter future crimes, and still others to satisfy the community's sense of justice. What might seem bizarre or unusual to modern eyes often made perfect sense within the context of Roman society and its values. Roman religious beliefs also played a crucial role in their legal system. The Romans believed that the gods took an active interest in human affairs, particularly in matters of justice and morality. Many punishments had religious dimensions, designed not only to satisfy human law, but also to appease divine justice. Temples dedicated to various gods and goddesses dotted the Roman landscape, serving as places of worship, legal sanctuary, and community gathering. The Roman Forum, the heart of legal and political life, was a magnificent space surrounded by basilicas, temples, and government buildings. Here, citizens would gather to hear legal cases argued, to witness public ceremonies, and to participate in the democratic processes that, even under the emperors, remained an important part of Roman civic life. The Forum was paved with smooth stone blocks that reflected the warm Mediterranean sun, creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted throughout the day. Roman education emphasized rhetoric, logic, and law, preparing young citizens to participate effectively in legal and political life. Boys from wealthy families would spend years studying under skilled teachers, learning to construct persuasive arguments, to analyze complex legal problems, and to speak with confidence and clarity in public forums. This educational tradition produced generations of skilled lawyers, judges, and administrators who helped maintain the legal system that held the empire together. The concept of citizenship in ancient Rome was both an honor and a responsibility. Roman citizens enjoyed certain legal protections and privileges, including the right to trial, the right to appeal, and protection from arbitrary punishment. The famous phrase, civis Romanus sum, I am a Roman citizen, could provide protection even in the farthest corners of the empire, as it invoked the full power and authority of Roman law. As evening approached in ancient Rome, families would gather for the main meal of the day, called cena. This was not just a time for nourishment, but an opportunity for conversation, education, and the strengthening of family bonds. Romans would recline on comfortable couches arranged around low tables, enjoying courses of vegetables, meat, fish, and wine, while discussing everything from philosophy to politics to the legal cases that had been heard in the forum that day. The Roman approach to punishment was deeply influenced by their understanding of human nature and social dynamics. They recognized that different types of crimes required different types of responses, and they developed a sophisticated system of penalties that ranged from simple fines to elaborate public spectacles. What unified all Roman punishments was the belief that justice should be visible, comprehensible, and ultimately restorative to the social order. Roman law evolved over centuries, adapting to changing circumstances while maintaining core principles of fairness and consistency. The famous legal scholar Gaius wrote that Roman law was based on three fundamental principles: to live honestly, to harm no one, and to give each person their due. These simple yet profound ideas guided Roman lawmakers as they developed the complexity legal code that would become the foundation for legal systems throughout Europe and beyond. As we prepare to explore the specific punishments that Romans devised for various crimes, it is important to remember that these practices emerged from a sophisticated civilization that valued order, dignity, and justice. What might seem strange or harsh to modern sensibilities often reflected deeply held beliefs about human nature, social responsibility, and the proper relationship between individual behavior and community welfare. The Roman world was one of marble and sunlight, of philosophical discussion and practical governance, of military might tempered by legal wisdom. It was a civilization that produced great poets like Virgil and Ovid, great historians like Tacitus and Livy, and great legal minds whose insights continue to influence us today. Understanding Roman punishments requires understanding this broader context, this rich tapestry of culture and law that made Rome one of history's most enduring civilizations. As dawn breaks over the eternal city, imagine yourself as a curious observer approaching the heart of Roman legal life. The morning air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of fresh bread from nearby bakeries and the subtle fragrance of cypress trees that line the sacred pathways leading to the forum. Your footsteps echo softly against the worn marble stones, each step taking you deeper into a world where justice was not merely an abstract concept, but a living, breathing part of daily existence. The Roman legal system operated within magnificent architectural spaces that were designed to inspire respect and contemplation. As you walk toward the basilicas where legal proceedings took place, you notice how the buildings seem to rise naturally from the earth, their columns reaching skyward like ancient trees, their proportions creating a sense of harmony and balance that immediately calms the mind and focuses the attention. The Basilica Julia, one of Rome's most important legal venues, stands before you like a temple dedicated to the goddess of justice herself. Built by Julius Caesar and completed under Augustus, this magnificent structure could accommodate hundreds of citizens who came to witness legal proceedings, participate in civic life, or simply observe the fascinating spectacle of Roman law in action. The building's interior is bathed in soft, natural light that filters through high windows, creating an atmosphere that is both solemn and welcoming. Roman legal proceedings were public affairs, open to all citizens who wished to observe. This transparency was fundamental to Roman concepts of justice, the idea that law should be visible, understandable, and accountable to the people it served. As you settle into a comfortable position among the gathered citizens, you become part of a tradition that stretches back centuries, a living demonstration of democratic principles that influenced civilizations far beyond Rome's borders. The architecture of Roman legal spaces was carefully designed to promote both dignity and accessibility. The raised platforms where judges sat, called tribunals, were elevated enough to command respect, but not so high as to seem disconnected from the people. The acoustic properties of these buildings were remarkable, allowing even quiet voices to be heard clearly throughout the space, ensuring that every word of testimony and every legal argument could be followed by the assembled citizens. Roman judges, called praetors, were elected officials who served for 1 year terms. These men were typically experienced in law, politics, and administration, chosen for their wisdom, integrity, and understanding of Roman legal principles. They wore distinctive togas with purple stripes that indicated their official status, and they carried themselves with the quiet dignity that Romans associated with public service and civic responsibility. The legal proceedings began each day with certain rituals that connected the earthly process of justice to divine authority. Offerings might be made to various gods, particularly Themis, the goddess of divine law, and Justitia, the personification of justice. These ceremonies were brief but meaningful, serving to remind everyone present that Roman law was not merely a human invention, but part of a larger cosmic order that governed both heaven and earth. As cases were called and lawyers began their presentations, you observe the remarkable skill with which Roman advocates constructed their arguments. Roman legal education emphasized rhetoric, logic, and persuasion, producing lawyers who could make complex legal principles accessible to ordinary citizens while maintaining the intellectual rigor that Roman law demanded. These advocates wore simple white togas that allowed their words and arguments to take center stage rather than their appearance or social status. The Roman legal system recognized different categories of punishment, each designed to address specific types of wrongdoing while maintaining the overall harmony of society. Some punishments were primarily deterrent, designed to discourage others from committing similar crimes. Others were reformative, intended to help offenders understand the consequences of their actions and return to productive membership in the community. Still others were symbolic, serving to reinforce important social values and remind citizens of their responsibilities to one another. Roman punishments often had theatrical elements, that might seem unusual to modern observers but made perfect sense within the context of Roman cultures. Romans loved spectacle, drama, and public ceremony, and they understood that effective punishment must not only address the specific crime, but also engage the broader community in a meaningful way. This theatrical aspect served important educational and social functions, helping to reinforce shared values and demonstrate the consequences of antisocial behaviors. The concept of proportionality was central to Roman punishment philosophy. The severity of punishment should match the severity of the crime, but it should also take into account the social status of both the offender and the victim, the circumstances surrounding the crime, and the potential impact on the broader community. This nuanced approach required judges to consider multiple factors and exercise considerable discretion in crafting appropriate sentences. Roman legal scholars spent considerable time debating the purposes of punishment and developing theoretical frameworks that could guide practical decision making. They recognized that punishment served multiple functions: retribution for past wrongs, deterrence of future crimes, reformation of offenders, and restoration of social harmony. Balancing these different goals required wisdom, experience, and a deep understanding of human nature and social dynamics. The physical settings where Roman punishments were carried out were as carefully considered as the punishments themselves. The Forum, with its wide open spaces and elevated platforms, provided natural theaters where citizens could observe legal proceedings and their outcomes. The Circus Maximus and the Colosseum later became venues for more elaborate punishments that combined justice with entertainment, reflecting Roman beliefs about the educational value of public spectacle. Roman citizens who observed legal proceedings were not passive spectators, but active participants in the legal process. They could cheer or boo lawyers' arguments, express approval or disapproval of judicial decisions, and engage in the kind of civic discourse that Romans believed was essential to a healthy society. This participation helped ensure that Roman law remained connected to popular values and concerns rather than becoming the exclusive domain of legal professionals. The Roman approach to criminal justice emphasized restoration over mere punishment. Even when dealing with serious crimes, Romans looked for ways to repair the damage that had been done to individuals and to the community as a whole. This might involve financial compensation, public service, or symbolic acts that demonstrated the offender's recognition of wrongdoing and commitment to making amends. Roman legal proceedings often began early in the morning and continued through the heat of the day, with breaks for meals and rest, and the rhythm of these proceedings matched the natural rhythms of Roman life, allowing citizens to participate in legal affairs while still attending to their own business and family responsibilities. The integration of legal life with daily life helped ensure that law remained a living part of Roman culture rather than an abstract system imposed from above. As you observe these proceedings, you begin to understand that Roman punishment practices, however unusual they might seem to modern eyes, emerged from a sophisticated understanding of human psychology, social dynamics, and the requirements of justice. Romans believed that effective punishment must address not only the specific crime, but also the broader social conditions that contributed to criminal behavior. The Roman legal system's emphasis on public participation and transparency created a form of accountability that helped prevent the arbitrary exercise of power. Judges knew that their decisions would be observed and discussed by their fellow citizens, creating incentives for fairness, consistency, and adherence to established legal principles. This public oversight was one of the key factors that allowed Roman law to maintain its legitimacy and effectiveness over centuries of social and political change. Roman punishment practices also reflected the empire's remarkable diversity as Rome expanded to encompass different cultures and legal traditions. Roman law adapted to incorporate useful ideas from other civilizations while maintaining its essential character. This flexibility and openness to innovation was one of the key factors that allowed Roman law to serve as the foundation for legal systems throughout Europe and beyond. The atmospheric qualities of Roman legal spaces contributed to their effectiveness as venues for justice. The play of light and shadow throughout the day, the echo of voices against marble walls, the subtle sounds of the city filtering in from outside. All of these elements created an environment that was conducive to careful thought, respectful discourse, and wise decision making. Romans understood that the physical environment could profoundly influence human behavior and designed their legal spaces accordingly. As the morning progresses and more cases are heard, you begin to appreciate the complexity and sophistication of the Roman approach to criminal justice. Each case is unique, requiring careful consideration of facts, circumstances, and applicable legal principles. The judges demonstrate remarkable skill in balancing competing interests and crafting solutions that address the immediate problem while serving the long term interests of justice and social harmony. The warm afternoon sun filters through the high windows of the basilica, casting gentle patterns of light across the marble floor as you settle more deeply into your observation of Roman legal proceedings. The initial formalities have concluded, and now you witness the gradual unfolding of actual cases, each one offering a window into the fascinating world of Roman criminal justice and the unique punishments that this ancient civilization developed to maintain order and promote social harmony. The first case to be heard involves a merchant accused of selling defective goods in the marketplace. The accusation itself seems straightforward enough, but as the proceedings unfold, you begin to understand the intricate layers of Roman commercial law and the creative ways in which Romans addressed violations of trust and fair dealing. The merchant stands calmly before the tribunal, his toga arranged with the careful dignity that Romans associated with proper civic behavior, even under circumstances of accusation and potential punishment. Roman commercial law recognized that trade and commerce were essential to the empire's prosperity, and that maintaining trust between buyers and sellers was crucial to economic stability. When merchants violated this trust by selling defective or misrepresented goods, the punishment was designed not only to compensate the injured parties, but also to restore confidence in the marketplace as a whole. The remedies often involved creative forms of public acknowledgement that served both educational and reformative purposes. The prosecutor in this case, a skilled advocate trained in the finest schools of Roman rhetoric, begins his presentation with a careful analysis of the evidence. Roman legal procedure emphasized the importance of facts, requiring accusers to present detailed testimony, physical evidence, and witness statements to support their claims. This emphasis on evidence was one of the innovations that distinguished Roman law from earlier legal systems that relied more heavily on superstition, divine judgment, or the arbitrary decisions of rulers. As the evidence unfolds, you learn that the merchant had been selling olive oil that had been diluted with cheaper substances, passing it off as pure oil of the highest quality. In Roman society, olive oil was not merely a commodity, but an essential element of daily life, used for cooking, lighting, personal hygiene, and religious ceremonies. Adulterating olive oil was therefore seen as more than simple fraud. It was an attack on the very foundations of Roman domestic and spiritual life. The defense advocate, equally skilled in the arts of rhetoric and legal argument, presents a different interpretation of the facts. Perhaps the merchant was himself deceived by his suppliers, or perhaps the dilution occurred accidentally during transport from distant provinces. Roman law recognized the importance of intent in determining both guilt and appropriate punishment, and defense advocates were skilled at raising questions about their client's state of mind and the circumstances surrounding alleged crimes. Roman judges listened carefully to both sides of each case, taking notes on wax tablets that could be easily erased and reused. These tablets were practical tools that allowed judges to track complex arguments, record key facts, and organize their thoughts as cases proceeded. The sight of judges thoughtfully writing and erasing, considering and reconsidering their notes, reinforced the impression that Roman justice was a careful, deliberative process rather than a hasty rush to judgment. The atmosphere in the basilica during these proceedings was remarkably civilized and respectful. Citizens who had gathered to observe maintained a quiet attention that demonstrated their understanding of the importance of legal proceedings to their community's welfare. Occasionally, there might be murmurs of approval or concern, as particularly compelling arguments were presented, but these sounds were more like the gentle rustling of leaves than any kind of disruptive noise. Roman law recognized several categories of fraud and commercial misconduct, each requiring different types of response. Simple negligence might result in financial compensation and perhaps some form of public acknowledgement of error. Deliberate deception, on the other hand, called for more creative punishments that would serve as effective deterrents while educating the broader community about the importance of honest dealing. As the merchant case progresses toward resolution, another case is called involving a different type of offense entirely. This case involves a citizen accused of disturbing the peace during a religious festival, an offense that Romans took quite seriously given their belief that proper religious observance was essential to maintaining divine favor and social harmony. The accused individual, a young man from a respectable family, appears nervous but maintains the composure that Roman culture expected, even under difficult circumstances. Religious festivals in ancient Rome were elaborate affairs that combined spiritual observance with community celebration. These events, held throughout the year in honor of various gods and goddesses, were times when ordinary social rules were sometimes relaxed and citizens were encouraged to express joy and thanksgiving for divine blessings. However, this relaxation of normal behavior had limits, and citizens who went too far in their celebrations could find themselves facing legal consequences. The charge in this particular case involves the young man's alleged disruption of sacrificial ceremonies dedicated to Ceres, the goddess of agriculture and grain crops. According to witnesses, he had consumed too much wine and began shouting inappropriate comments during the solemn moments when priests were offering prayers and making sacrifices. In Roman religious thinking, such disruption could potentially anger the gods and bring misfortune upon the entire community. Roman religious law was complex and nuanced, recognizing different degrees of sacrilege and impiety. Minor disruptions might be addressed through ritual purification and offerings to appease offended deities. More serious offenses could result in exclusion from future religious ceremonies, public penance, or in extreme cases, exile from the community altogether. The goal was always to restore proper relationship between humans and gods while maintaining social order. The testimony in this case reveals the careful attention that Romans paid to religious propriety and the social functions that religious festivals served in their community life. Witnesses describe the festival atmosphere, the scent of incense burning on temple altars, the sound of hymns and prayers echoing through sacred spaces, the sight of citizens dressed in their finest clothing, participating in ancient rituals that connected them to their ancestors and their gods. Roman priests, called pontiffs, played important roles in legal proceedings involving religious offenses. These religious officials were not separate from civil society, but were prominent citizens who served both religious and civic functions. Their testimony carried special weight in cases involving religious law, and their recommendations for appropriate punishment were usually accepted by secular judges. The punishments for religious offenses often had symbolic elements that reflected Roman beliefs about the relationship between human behavior and divine will. A person who had disrupted religious ceremonies might be required to participate in purification rituals, make special offerings to offended deities, or perform public acts of penance that demonstrated their recognition of wrongdoing and commitment to proper religious behavior in the future. As these cases unfold before you, patterns begin to emerge in Roman punishment philosophy. Romans consistently sought punishments that would address multiple goals simultaneously, deterring future offenses, educating the community about proper behavior, reforming offenders, and maintaining social harmony. This multifaceted approach required creativity and wisdom from judges who had to balance competing interests and craft solutions that served the common good. The procedural aspects of Roman law were as important as the substantive rules themselves. Roman legal procedure emphasized fairness, transparency, and the careful evaluation of evidence. Accused individuals had the right to present defenses, call witnesses, and challenge the testimony presented against them. These procedural protections helped ensure that Roman justice was not arbitrary or capricious, but was based on careful consideration of facts and applicable legal principles. Roman courts also recognized the importance of social context in determining appropriate punishments. The same offense might result in different penalties depending on the social status of the offender, the circumstances surrounding the crime, and the potential impact on community welfare. This flexibility allowed Roman law to address the unique features of each case while maintaining overall consistency and fairness. The physical comfort of Roman legal spaces contributed to their effectiveness as venues for thoughtful deliberation. The basilicas were designed with natural ventilation that kept them cool even during hot summer days, comfortable seating that allowed citizens to observe proceedings without fatigue, and acoustic properties that ensured clear communication between all participants. These environmental factors helped create conditions conducive to careful thought and wise decision making. As the afternoon progresses and shadows grow longer across the marble floor, you find yourself drawn deeper into the fascinating world of Roman justice. Each case offers new insights into the values, beliefs, and practical wisdom that guided this remarkable civilization in its approach to crime and punishment. The creativity and sophistication of Roman legal thinking becomes increasingly apparent as you witness the careful balancing of individual rights, community needs, and social harmony that characterized their approach to justice. The afternoon light has shifted to a warmer, more golden hue as it streams through the high windows of the basilica, creating an atmosphere of contemplative serenity that seems perfectly suited to the careful deliberation of justice. You find yourself settling into a comfortable rhythm of observation, your initial curiosity about Roman legal proceedings gradually deepening into a genuine appreciation for the wisdom and sophistication that this ancient civilization brought to questions of crime and punishment. The cases you have observed thus far have involved relatively minor offenses, commercial fraud, and religious disruption. But now the proceedings turn to more serious matters that reveal the full complexity of Roman criminal law. A case is called involving theft, one of the most common crimes in any society, and one that Romans addressed with particular creativity and attention to the social dynamics involved in violations of property rights. The accused thief stands before the tribunal with the quiet dignity that Roman culture demanded even from those facing serious charges. Roman legal philosophy held that every citizen, regardless of their circumstances or alleged crimes, possessed inherent dignity that must be respected throughout legal proceedings. This principle influenced not only the procedural aspects of Roman law, but also the types of punishments that were considered appropriate for different offenses. Roman property law was remarkably sophisticated, recognizing different types of ownership, various forms of possession, and complex relationships between individuals and their belongings. Theft was not simply the taking of another person's property, but a violation of the social bonds that held the community together. Roman punishments for theft were therefore designed to address not only the immediate harm to the victim, but also the broader damage to social trust and cooperation. The prosecutor in this case presents evidence methodically and carefully, following established procedures that ensured fair treatment for both accusers and accused. Roman legal procedure required specific types of evidence for different kinds of crimes, and prosecutors had to demonstrate not only that a theft had occurred, but also that the accused individual was responsible for it. This emphasis on proof and evidence was one of the features that made Roman law more reliable and predictable than earlier legal systems. The theft in question involves household items taken from a wealthy citizen's home during a dinner party. Roman dinner parties were important social events that served multiple functions in addition to providing meals. They were opportunities for business dealings, political discussions, cultural exchange, and the strengthening of social bonds between families and friends. The violation of hospitality through theft was therefore seen as particularly serious, threatening the social institutions that made civilized life possible. Roman houses were designed to accommodate social gatherings with spacious dining rooms, called triclinia, where guests would recline on comfortable couches arranged around low tables. These rooms were often decorated with beautiful frescoes, mosaics, and sculptures that displayed the host's wealth and cultural sophistication. The theft of items from such spaces was not merely a property crime, but an attack on the social customs and cultural values that Romans held dear. As the evidence unfolds, you learn that the accused individual was not a random burglar, but a guest at the dinner party, someone who had been welcomed into the host's home and treated with the courtesy and respect that Roman hospitality demanded. This betrayal of trust made the offense particularly egregious in Roman eyes and called for punishments that would address the violation of social bonds as well as the simple taking of property. Roman law recognized different categories of theft, each requiring different types of response. Theft by stealth, committed secretly without the victim's knowledge, was treated differently from theft by force, which involved violence or intimidation. Theft by a stranger was handled differently from theft by someone known to the victim, and theft of common items was distinguished from theft of objects with special religious, cultural, or sentimental significance. The defense advocate in this case raises questions about the accused's state of mind and the circumstances surrounding the alleged theft. Perhaps the items were taken by mistake, or perhaps they were borrowed with the intention of returning them. Roman law recognized that intent was crucial in determining both guilt and appropriate punishment, and defense advocates were skilled at presenting alternative explanations for their client's behavior. Roman judges were expected to consider not only the facts of each case, but also the character of the individuals involved and the potential consequences of different punishments for both the offender and the community. This holistic approach to justice required wisdom, experience, and a deep understanding of human nature and social dynamics. Judges often consulted with legal advisors and community elders before making final decisions about punishment. The punishments available for theft in Roman law included financial compensation, public humiliation, physical penalties, and in extreme cases, exile or death. However, Romans generally preferred punishments that could reform offenders and restore them to productive membership in the community rather than simply inflicting harm or removing them from society altogether. This preference for restorative rather than purely punitive measures reflected Roman beliefs about human nature and the purposes of criminal law. As this theft case proceeds toward resolution, another case is called involving a more unusual offense that demonstrates the breadth and creativity of Roman legal thinking. This case involves someone accused of impersonating a Roman citizen, a crime that might seem minor to modern observers, but was taken very seriously in Roman society, where citizenship was a precious privilege that carried both rights and responsibilities. Roman citizenship was not automatically granted to everyone living within the empire's borders, but was a special status that had to be earned or inherited. Citizens enjoyed important legal protections, including the right to trial, the right to appeal, and immunity from certain types of punishment. They also had responsibilities, including military service, tax obligations, and participation in civic life. The boundaries between citizens and non citizens were carefully maintained, and violations of these boundaries were treated as serious offenses. The accused in this citizenship case is a man from one of Rome's provinces who allegedly claimed citizen status in order to avoid military conscription and gain access to certain legal privileges. The investigation of such cases required careful examination of documents, witness testimony, and family histories to determine the truth about an individual's legal status. Roman bureaucracy maintained detailed records of citizenship grants, family lineages, and legal proceedings, creating a paper trail that could be used to verify or refute claims of citizen status. Roman military service was both a duty and an honor for citizens, providing opportunities for advancement, financial reward, and social recognition. However, military life was also dangerous and demanding, requiring years of training, discipline, and service in distant provinces. The temptation to avoid military obligations by claiming false exemptions or status was understandable. But Romans viewed such deception as a serious violation of civic duty. The punishment for impersonating a citizen could be severe, potentially including loss of legal protections, financial penalties, public humiliation, or even enslavement. However, Roman law also recognized that such cases often involved complex family histories, confusing legal status, or genuine misunderstanding rather than deliberate fraud. Judges were expected to carefully evaluate each case to determine whether the offense was intentional and malicious or resulted from confusion or ignorance. Roman legal proceedings involving citizenship questions often required testimony from multiple witnesses, examination of family documents, and consultation with records maintained by various government offices. These investigations could take considerable time and required significant resources, reflecting the importance that Romans placed on maintaining clear boundaries between different legal statuses and ensuring that citizenship privileges were not improperly claimed or granted. The atmosphere in the basilica during these more complex cases becomes even more contemplative and focused. Citizens observing the proceedings understand that they are witnessing not merely the resolution of individual disputes, but the working out of fundamental principles that affect the entire community. The careful attention paid to evidence, procedure, and legal reasoning demonstrates Roman commitment to justice as a rational, systematic process rather than an arbitrary exercise of power. Roman legal education emphasized the importance of precedent and consistency in judicial decision making. Judges were expected to consider how similar cases had been resolved in the past and to maintain consistency with established legal principles while also adapting to the unique circumstances of each new case. This balance between consistency and flexibility was one of the key features that made Roman law both stable and adaptable over centuries of social and political change. The physical environment of the basilica continues to influence the proceedings in subtle but important ways. The natural lighting creates a sense of openness and transparency that reinforces Roman values of public accountability and civic participation. The acoustic properties ensure that every word can be heard clearly, preventing misunderstanding and encouraging careful attention to detail. The comfortable temperature and ventilation help maintain the mental clarity necessary for complex legal reasoning. As these cases unfold, you begin to understand that Roman punishment practices were not simply arbitrary traditions, but reflected sophisticated thinking about human behavior, social organization, and the requirements of justice. Each punishment was carefully designed to address specific goals while maintaining overall social harmony and promoting the values that Romans believed were essential to civilized life. As the golden afternoon light deepens into the rich amber tones of early evening, your understanding of Roman legal culture has evolved into something approaching genuine contemplation. The cases you have observed have revealed layers of complexity and wisdom that invite deeper reflection on the nature of justice, punishment, and social harmony. The atmosphere in the basilica has grown quieter and more meditative as the day progresses, creating perfect conditions for the kind of thoughtful consideration that Roman legal philosophy both required and inspired. The concept of proportionality in Roman punishment becomes increasingly clear as you observe case after case being resolved with careful attention to the relationship between offense and consequence. Romans believed deeply that punishment should fit the crime not only in severity, but also in character, that the response to wrongdoing should address the specific harm that had been done while also serving broader social purposes. This sophisticated understanding of proportionality influenced every aspect of Roman criminal law and led to some of the most creative and effective punishment practices in human history. One of the most fascinating aspects of Roman punishment philosophy was the concept of poena culae, the punishment of the sack, which was reserved for the most heinous crime in Roman society, patricide, the killing of one's father. This punishment, which might seem bizarre or cruel to modern sensibilities, actually reflected profound Roman beliefs about family relationships, social order, and the cosmic significance of certain types of wrongdoing. Understanding this punishment requires understanding the entire Roman worldview and the central role that family authority played in their conception of social organization. Roman society was built on the foundation of family structure, with the father serving as the absolute authority within the household and the representative of divine order in human affairs. The paterfamilias was not merely the head of a family, but a sacred figure whose authority derived from the gods themselves and whose protection was essential to the welfare of all family members. To kill one's father was therefore not simply murder, but a violation of the cosmic order that threatened the very foundations of civilization. The punishment of the sack involved sewing the patricide into a leather bag, along with a dog, a rooster, a viper, and an ape, then throwing the bag into water to drown. Each animal in the sack had symbolic significance. The dog represented shamelessness. The rooster symbolized uncivilized behavior. The viper embodied treachery, and the ape signified the absence of human reason. Together, these creatures represented the bestial nature that Romans believed had taken control of someone who could commit such an unthinkable crime. This punishment was rarely carried out, not because Romans were reluctant to impose harsh penalties, but because patricide was extraordinarily rare in Roman society. The very existence of such a severe punishment served as a powerful deterrent and a clear statement of Roman values regarding family relationships and social order. The elaborate symbolism of the punishment also served educational purposes, teaching citizens about the consequences of violating fundamental social bonds. Roman legal scholars debated the theoretical foundations of punishment with the same intellectual rigor that they applied to other aspects of law and philosophy. They recognized that punishment served multiple functions: retribution for past wrongs, deterrence of future crimes, reformation of offenders, and expression of community values. Balancing these different purposes required careful thought and resulted in a sophisticated system of penalties that could be adapted to different circumstances and different types of offenders. The Roman approach to public humiliation as punishment reveals their deep understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. Romans recognized that social shame could be more effective than physical pain in deterring certain types of behavior, particularly crimes that involved violations of trust, honor, or social obligation. Public humiliation punishments were carefully designed to be memorable and meaningful while avoiding permanent physical harm to the offender. One common form of public humiliation involved requiring offenders to appear in public spaces wearing distinctive clothing or signs that identified their crimes. A merchant who had cheated customers might be required to wear a special tunic while conducting business, clearly marking him as someone whose commercial dealings required extra scrutiny. This type of punishment served both deterrent and protective functions, warning potential victims while allowing the offender to continue earning a livelihood. Roman law also recognized a category of punishments called nota censoria, marks of censure that could be imposed by Roman censors on citizens who had violated moral or social obligations without necessarily breaking specific laws. These marks could affect a citizen's political rights, social standing, and business opportunities, serving as effective deterrents for behavior that Romans considered improper or antisocial, even if it was not technically criminal. The concept of exile, or exilium, was another distinctive feature of Roman punishment that reflected their understanding of the relationship between individual behavior and community membership. Exile could be temporary or permanent, complete or partial, and could involve prohibition from specific places or activities rather than total banishment from Roman territory. This flexibility allowed judges to craft punishments that were precisely calibrated to address specific offenses while maintaining hope for eventual rehabilitation and reintegration. Temporary exile often involved retreat to a specific location where the offender could reflect on their behavior and prepare for eventual return to normal civic life. Romans believed that physical separation from familiar environments could promote moral reflection and personal growth, particularly when combined with study, philosophical contemplation, or religious observance. Some of Rome's greatest literary works were written by authors during periods of exile, suggesting that Romans understood the creative potential of enforced solitude and reflection. The Roman practice of damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, represented one of the most psychologically sophisticated punishments in ancient law. This penalty involved the systematic erasure of an individual's name and achievements from public records, monuments, and historical accounts, effectively removing them from collective memory and denying them the immortality that Romans believed came through lasting fame and remembrance. Damnatio memoriae was typically reserved for individuals who had betrayed the state or violated fundamental Roman values in ways that threatened the entire political and social order. The punishment reflected Roman beliefs about the relationship between individual identity and social recognition, and the idea that existence in memory was as important as physical existence. For Romans, who placed enormous value on reputation and historical legacy, this erasure from memory was a fate worse than death. Roman military discipline included distinctive punishments that reflected the special nature of military service and the particular requirements of maintaining order and effectiveness in armed forces. The practice of decimation, involving the execution of every 10th soldier in units that had shown cowardice or disobedience, demonstrated the extreme measures that Romans were willing to take to maintain military discipline and effectiveness. However, decimation was used sparingly and only in cases of mass disobedience or cowardice that threatened military effectiveness and the safety of other soldiers. Roman military commanders understood that excessive or arbitrary punishment could undermine morale and effectiveness just as surely as insufficient discipline. The threat of decimation was often more important than its actual implementation, serving as a powerful deterrent that helped maintain order without requiring frequent use of extreme measures. Roman naval punishment included the practice of keel hauling, which involved dragging offenders under the hull of ships as a form of both punishment and deterrent. This practice was typically reserved for serious offenses such as mutiny, desertion, or theft of military supplies, and was designed to address the special challenges of maintaining discipline in the confined environment of naval vessels where traditional forms of imprisonment or exile were not practical options. The Roman approach to punishment of slaves reveals both the harshness of ancient slavery and the legal protections that Roman law provided even to those at the bottom of the social hierarchy. While slave owners had broad authority to punish their slaves, Roman law imposed certain limits on this authority and provided legal remedies for slaves who were subjected to excessive or arbitrary punishment. These protections reflected Roman beliefs about the fundamental humanity of all people, even those who were legally considered property. Roman law recognized that slaves could be both victims and perpetrators of crimes, and that their legal status required special consideration in determining appropriate punishments. Slaves who committed crimes against free citizens faced severe penalties, but slaves who were victims of crimes by free citizens also had certain legal protections and remedies available to them. This complex legal framework reflected the contradictions and tensions inherent in a society that depended on slave labor while maintaining sophisticated concepts of justice and human dignity. The practice of manumission, the formal freeing of slaves, was often used as both reward for good behavior and incentive for future loyalty and service. Roman law provided detailed procedures for manumission and established legal rights and obligations for freed slaves, creating pathways for social mobility that were unusual in the ancient world. This system of gradual integration helped maintain social stability while providing hope for improvement in personal circumstances. Roman punishment practices evolved over time as the empire expanded and encountered different cultures and legal traditions. The flexibility and adaptability of Roman law allowed it to incorporate useful innovations from other civilizations while maintaining its essential character and principles. This evolution reflected Roman pragmatism and their willingness to learn from experience and adapt to changing circumstances. The influence of Stoic philosophy on Roman legal thinking became increasingly apparent during the imperial period, as Stoic concepts of natural law, human dignity, and moral responsibility influenced both legal theory and practical punishment decisions. Stoic emperors like Marcus Aurelius promoted more humane approaches to criminal justice that emphasized reformation over retribution and sought to address the underlying causes of criminal behavior rather than simply punishing its symptoms. Roman legal education included extensive study of punishment theory and practice, ensuring that judges, lawyers, and administrators understood not only the technical aspects of criminal law, but also its philosophical foundations and social purposes. This educational tradition produced generations of legal professionals who could apply Roman law effectively while adapting it to new circumstances and challenges. The architectural settings where Roman punishments were carried out were as carefully considered as the punishments themselves. Public spaces like the Forum, the Circus, and various amphitheaters were designed to accommodate large crowds and provide optimal viewing conditions for public ceremonies and spectacles. These venues served educational and social functions as well as punitive ones, bringing the community together to witness the enforcement of shared values and the consequences of violating social norms. As evening approaches and the light in the basilica grows softer and more contemplative, your understanding of Roman punishment practices has deepened into genuine appreciation for the wisdom and sophistication that this ancient civilization brought to questions of justice, social order, and human behavior. The complexity and thoughtfulness of Roman approaches to punishment reflect their broader commitment to reason, law, and the careful balance of individual rights with community needs. The evening light has taken on a peaceful contemplative quality as it filters through the high windows of the basilica, casting long, gentle shadows across the marble floor and creating an atmosphere that seems perfectly suited to deeper reflection on the mysteries and wisdom of Roman legal culture. Your earlier observations of individual cases have now crystallized into a broader understanding of the principles and philosophies that guided Roman approaches to crime and punishment, revealing a civilization that brought remarkable sophistication and humanity to questions that continue to challenge societies today. The Roman concept of clementia, or mercy, played a crucial role in their legal system and reflected their understanding that justice was not simply about mechanical application of rules, but required wisdom, compassion, and careful consideration of individual circumstances. Roman judges were expected to temper strict legal requirements with consideration for human frailty, social conditions, and the potential for redemption and reform. This balance between firmness and flexibility was one of the key features that made Roman law both effective and enduring. Clementia was particularly important in cases involving first time offenders, young people, or individuals whose crimes seemed to result from temporary circumstances rather than fundamental character flaws. Roman legal philosophy recognized that people could make mistakes without being fundamentally bad, and that punishment should be designed to address specific problems rather than to destroy individuals who might yet become productive members of society. The practice of provocatio, the right of appeal, provided another important safeguard against excessive or unjust punishment in Roman law. Roman citizens had the right to appeal sentences to higher authorities, ultimately including the emperor himself, ensuring that no individual could be subjected to arbitrary or capricious punishment without recourse to higher review. This system of appeals helped maintain public confidence in the fairness and reliability of Roman justice. Roman legal scholars developed sophisticated theories about the relationship between punishment and moral education, recognizing that effective punishment must not only deter specific behavior, but also teach broader lessons about right and wrong, social responsibility, and the consequences of violating community standards. This educational aspect of punishment was reflected in the public nature of many Roman penalties and the careful attention paid to the symbolic and ceremonial elements of legal proceedings. The Roman approach to restitution and compensation reveals their understanding that crime creates obligations not only between offenders and the state, but also between offenders and their victims. Roman law provided detailed procedures for calculating appropriate compensation for various types of harm and ensured that victims had meaningful opportunities to recover their losses and restore their position in the community. This emphasis on making victims whole was an important complement to the more punitive aspects of Roman criminal law. Roman religious law included distinctive punishments that reflected their beliefs about the relationship between human behavior and divine will. Violations of religious law could result in requirements for purification rituals, special offerings to offended deities, or exclusion from religious ceremonies and festivals. These punishments served to restore proper relationship between humans and gods, while also reinforcing the social importance of religious observance and proper ritual behavior. The Roman practice of sacratio capitis, declaring someone's life forfeit to the gods, was reserved for the most serious religious offenses and reflected their belief that some crimes were so heinous that they threatened divine favor for the entire community. This punishment was rarely carried out in practice, but served as a powerful symbol of the cosmic significance that Romans attributed to proper religious behavior and the maintenance of divine approval. Roman military law included creative punishments designed to address the special challenges of maintaining discipline and effectiveness in armed forces operating far from home under difficult and dangerous conditions. The practice of fustuarium, beating to death with clubs, was reserved for the most serious military offenses, such as desertion in the face of the enemy or betrayal of military secrets to opposing forces. However, Roman military commanders understood that excessive harshness could be counterproductive, undermining morale and effectiveness rather than promoting discipline and loyalty. Military punishments were therefore calibrated to address specific problems while maintaining the cohesions and fighting spirit that made Roman armies successful. The threat of severe punishment was often more important than its actual implementation, serving as a deterrent that helped maintain order without requiring frequent use of extreme measures. The Roman approach to punishment of political crimes reflects their complex understanding of the relationship between individual conscience and state authority. While Romans valued loyalty and obedience to lawful authority, they also recognized that political systems could become corrupt and that citizens might face genuine conflicts between their obligations to the state and their moral convictions. This recognition led to nuanced approaches to political offenses that took into account the motivations and circumstances of alleged offenders. Roman law distinguished between different types of political crimes, treating acts of personal ambition differently from acts of principled resistance to unjust authority. Conspiracies motivated by greed or personal advancement were punished more severely than actions taken from genuine belief in alternative policies or constitutional arrangements. This distinction reflected Roman understanding that political loyalty was complex and that effective government required both order and flexibility. The practice of aquae et ignis interdictio, prohibition from water and fire, was a form of civil death that deprived offenders of the basic elements necessary for life, while technically allowing them to survive if they could find refuge beyond Roman territory. This punishment was typically used for serious political offenses and reflected Roman understanding that some crimes severed the bonds between individuals and their community so completely that restoration was impossible. Roman commercial law included creative punishments for violations of trade regulations and market standards that reflected their understanding of the importance of economic trust and cooperation to the empire's prosperity. Merchants who violated weight and measure standards might be required to compensate customers and also to provide public service, maintaining market facilities, or supporting trade infrastructure. These punishments addressed immediate harm while also contributing to the common good. The Roman approach to punishment of sexual offenses reveals their complex attitudes toward sexuality, family relationships, and social order. Roman law distinguished between different types of sexual behavior, treating violations of marriage vows differently from other forms of sexual misconduct, and considering the social status of the individuals involved, as well as the specific nature of their behavior. These distinctions reflected Roman beliefs about the relationship between personal behavior and social stability. Roman marriage law provided specific remedies for adultery and other violations of marital obligations, including financial penalties, loss of property rights, and in some cases, divorce proceedings that could affect the social standing and economic position of guilty parties. However, Roman law also recognized that marriage relationships were complex and that simple mechanical application of rules might not serve the interests of justice or social harmony in particular cases. The Roman practice of infamia, legal infamy, provided a way to mark individuals who had violated social norms without necessarily imposing criminal penalties. Citizens marked with infamia lost certain legal rights and social privileges, serving as a form of social discipline that encouraged proper behavior while allowing marked individuals to continue participating in economic and family life. This system provided flexible responses to misconduct that fell between minor infractions and serious crimes. Roman punishment practices included provisions for rehabilitation and reintegration that reflected their belief that most offenders could be reformed and restored to productive membership in the community. Temporary punishments were often combined with opportunities for education, training, or public service that could help offenders develop skills and attitudes necessary for law abiding citizenship. This forward looking approach to criminal justice was unusual in the ancient world and demonstrated Roman commitment to human dignity and potential for improvement. The Roman legal system's emphasis on procedural fairness and due process helped ensure that punishments were imposed only after careful consideration of evidence and applicable legal principles. The requirement for proper notification, opportunity for defense, and adherence to established procedures created safeguards against arbitrary or excessive punishment while maintaining public confidence in the reliability and fairness of legal proceedings. Roman legal education included extensive study of comparative punishment practices from other civilizations, allowing Roman lawmakers to learn from the experiences of other cultures while adapting useful innovations to Roman conditions and values. This openness to learning and adaptation was one of the key factors that allowed Roman law to remain effective and relevant over centuries of social and political change. The influence of Roman punishment practices extended far beyond the boundaries of the empire itself, affecting legal development in civilizations that came into contact with Roman law through trade, diplomacy, or conquest. Many features of modern legal systems can be traced back to Roman innovations in criminal justice, demonstrating the lasting influence of Roman legal thinking on human civilization. As the evening deepens and the atmosphere in the basilica becomes even more peaceful and contemplative, your appreciation for the wisdom and sophistication of Roman legal culture has evolved into something approaching genuine admiration. The careful balance that Romans achieved between firmness and flexibility, between individual rights and community needs, between punishment and mercy, represents one of humanity's great achievements in the pursuit of justice and social harmony. The evening has settled into that magical time when daylight gradually yields to dusk, and the basilica is bathed in the soft golden glow that Romans called the hora lucerna, the lamplighting hour. This is a time for deeper contemplation, when the practical business of the day gives way to philosophical reflection and the consideration of eternal truths. Your understanding of Roman punishment practices has now transcended mere curiosity about unusual historical practices and evolved into genuine appreciation for the profound wisdom that ancient Roman civilization brought to fundamental questions about human nature, social organization, and the requirements of justice. The Roman concept of gravitas, the quality of serious dignity and moral weight, permeated every aspect of their legal system and helps explain why their approach to punishment emphasized education and reformation rather than simple retribution. Romans believed that effective law must appeal to the better angels of human nature, encouraging citizens to choose right behavior not merely from fear of consequences, but from understanding of their obligations to the community and their own moral development. This emphasis on moral education was reflected in the ceremonial aspects of Roman legal proceedings, which were designed to be memorable and meaningful experiences that would stay with participants and observers long after specific cases were resolved. The physical beauty of Roman legal spaces, the dignity of legal procedures, and the thoughtful consideration given to each case all contributed to an atmosphere that elevated legal proceedings above mere administrative functions and transformed them into genuine expressions of community values and aspirations. Roman legal philosophy was deeply influenced by Stoic concepts of natural law, which held that there were universal principles of justice that transcended particular cultures, circumstances, or historical periods. This belief in universal moral principles gave Roman law a philosophical foundation that helped it remain relevant and influential long after the political empire had disappeared. The idea that law should be based on reason rather than mere power or tradition was one of Rome's great contributions to human civilization. The Stoic influence on Roman punishment practices can be seen in their emphasis on proportionality, their concern for the moral development of offenders, and their recognition that punishment should serve the common good rather than simply satisfying desires for revenge or retribution. Stoic philosophers taught that virtue was the highest good and that all human beings had the capacity for moral improvement, ideas that influenced Roman approaches to criminal justice and helped create more humane and effective punishment practices. Roman legal scholars developed sophisticated theories about the relationship between individual behavior and social harmony, recognizing that crime was not simply a matter of personal failing, but often reflected broader social conditions that needed to be addressed through law and public policy. This understanding led to punishment practices that sought to address underlying causes of criminal behavior rather than simply responding to its symptoms. The Roman practice of clementia was not weakness or sentimentality, but represented a sophisticated understanding of human psychology and the most effective ways to promote law abiding behaviors. Romans recognized that mercy and forgiveness could sometimes be more powerful than harsh punishment in reforming offenders and maintaining social order. This insight required considerable wisdom and restraint from judges who had to balance competing demands for justice, deterrence, and social harmony. Roman religious concepts profoundly influenced their understanding of punishment and justice, particularly the idea that human law should reflect divine order and that violations of law disrupted not only social harmony but also cosmic balance. This religious dimension gave Roman punishment practices a significance that extended beyond practical considerations of deterrence and reform to encompass broader questions about the nature of reality and humanity's place in the universe. The Roman concept of pietas, dutiful devotion to family, gods, and state, provided a unifying principle that helped explain why certain behaviors were considered particularly serious crimes, deserving of unusual punishments. Violations of pietas threatened the foundations of Roman society and required responses that would restore proper relationships and demonstrate the community's commitment to fundamental values. Roman legal ceremonies often included religious elements that connected earthly justice to divine authority, reminding participants that human law was part of a larger cosmic order that demanded respect and obedience. These ceremonial aspects served important psychological and social functions, helping to maintain public respect for law and legal institutions while providing meaningful frameworks for understanding the significance of legal proceedings. The Roman approach to punishment reflected their understanding of time and human development, recognizing that people could change and improve over the course of their lives, and that punishment should be designed to promote such positive change rather than simply inflicting suffering or removing problematic individuals from society. This forward looking perspective was unusual in the ancient world and demonstrated remarkable sophistication in Roman thinking about human nature and social organization. Roman law's emphasis on written statutes and formal procedures reflected their belief that justice should be predictable, understandable, and accessible to ordinary citizens, rather than being the exclusive province of rulers or priests. This democratization of law was one of Rome's great innovations and helped create legal systems that could serve diverse populations and adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining essential principles of fairness and consistency. The Roman practice of recording legal precedents and maintaining detailed records of legal proceedings created a body of legal knowledge that could be studied, refined, and transmitted to future generations. This institutional memory helped ensure that the wisdom gained through centuries of legal experience would not be lost and could continue to inform legal development long after particular judges, lawyers, or political leaders had passed from the scene. Roman legal education emphasized not only technical knowledge of laws and procedures, but also the philosophical foundations of justice and the moral obligations of those who participated in legal proceedings. This comprehensive approach to legal education helped create generations of legal professionals who understood their work as more than simply a technical craft, but as a calling that required wisdom, integrity, and commitment to the common good. The Roman concept of auctoritas, moral authority based on wisdom and virtue rather than mere power or position, influenced their understanding of who should be trusted with judicial authority and how such authority should be exercised. Roman judges were expected to earn respect through their fairness, wisdom, and commitment to justice rather than simply commanding obedience through their official position. Roman punishment practices included provisions for community participation and oversight that reflected their belief that justice was too important to be left entirely to government officials. Citizens had roles to play as witnesses, jurors, and observers of legal proceedings, ensuring that law remained connected to popular values and concerns rather than becoming an isolated technical specialty divorced from community life. The Roman approach to international law and the treatment of non citizens reveals their understanding that justice had universal dimensions that transcended particular political boundaries or cultural differences. While Roman citizens enjoyed special privileges and protections, Roman law also provided certain rights and remedies for non citizens, reflecting beliefs about fundamental human dignity that were remarkably advanced for their time. Roman legal philosophy grappled seriously with questions about the limits of law and the relationship between legal obligations and moral responsibilities. Romans recognized that law could not solve all human problems and that there were areas of life where legal intervention might be inappropriate or counterproductive. This understanding of law's limitations helped create more effective and sustainable legal systems that focused on essential functions while leaving other aspects of human behavior to family, religious, and social institutions. The Roman tradition of legal commentary and scholarly debate created intellectual frameworks that continued to influence legal thinking long after the fall of the empire. Roman legal scholars wrote extensively about the theoretical foundations of law, the proper interpretation of statutes, and the application of legal principles to novel situations. This scholarly tradition helped preserve and transmit Roman legal wisdom to future civilizations. Roman law's influence on subsequent legal development demonstrates the lasting value of their insights into human nature, social organization, and the requirements of justice. Many features of modern legal systems can be traced back to Roman innovations, suggesting that Romans achieved genuine insights into fundamental aspects of law and justice that remain relevant today. As the evening continues to deepen and the basilica is gradually illuminated by the warm glow of oil lamps, your contemplation of Roman legal culture has reached a level of appreciation that transcends historical curiosity and approaches genuine wisdom. The careful balance that Romans achieved between competing values, their sophisticated understanding of human nature, and their commitment to justice as both a practical necessity and a moral ideal represent achievements that continue to inspire and instruct those who seek to create just and humane societies. As the last rays of sunlight fade into the gentle purple twilight that Romans called crepusculum, the basilica takes on an atmosphere of profound tranquility and reflection. The oil lamps that now provide illumination cast a warm, flickering glow across the marble surfaces, creating patterns of light and shadow that seem to dance in harmony with the quiet rhythm of your breathing. This is the time when the practical business of law gives way to deeper contemplation of its meaning and significance, when the specific details of cases and punishments blend into broader understanding of the wisdom and humanity that characterized Roman civilization at its best. The Roman understanding of justice as both a practical necessity and a transcendent ideal becomes increasingly clear as you reflect on the day's observations. Romans did not view law simply as a tool for maintaining order or protecting property, but as an expression of fundamental truths about human nature, social responsibility, and the requirements of civilized life. This elevated understanding of law's purpose influenced every aspect of Roman legal culture, from the architectural beauty of their courts to the philosophical sophistication of their punishment practices. Roman legal scholars wrote extensively about the concept of equitas, equity or fairness, which they understood as a principle that could modify the strict application of written law when circumstances required a more nuanced response. This recognition that rigid adherence to rules might sometimes produce unjust results demonstrates remarkable sophistication in Roman legal thinking and helps explain why their legal system remained effective and respected even as it evolved over centuries of social and political change. The Roman approach to punishment was deeply influenced by their understanding of human dignity and the belief that even those who had committed serious crimes retained their essential humanity and their potential for moral improvement. This belief led to punishment practices that sought to reform and rehabilitate offenders rather than simply inflicting suffering or removing them from society. Such approaches required wisdom, patience, and faith in human nature that were remarkable for any historical period. Roman religious beliefs about divine justice influenced their understanding of earthly punishment, particularly the idea that human law should reflect cosmic order and that violations of law disrupted not only social harmony, but also the proper relationship between humans and gods. This religious dimension gave Roman punishment practices a significance that extended beyond immediate practical considerations to encompass broader questions about the nature of reality and humanity's place in the universe. The concept of clementia, mercy, was particularly important in Roman legal culture and reflected their understanding that true strength often required restraint and that the highest expression of power might be its limitation rather than its unlimited exercise. Roman emperors who showed clemency were praised not for weakness, but for wisdom, demonstrating their understanding that effective leadership required the ability to balance firmness with compassion. Roman legal procedures emphasized the importance of giving accused individuals full opportunities to present their defenses and challenge the evidence against them. This commitment to procedural fairness reflected Roman beliefs about human dignity and the recognition that even the guilty deserved respectful treatment and careful consideration of their circumstances. Such procedural protections helped maintain public confidence in the fairness and reliability of Roman justice. The Roman practice of maintaining detailed records of legal proceedings created an institutional memory that helped ensure consistency and fairness in judicial decision making, while also providing valuable resources for legal education and scholarly analysis. These records documented not only the facts of particular cases, but also the reasoning behind judicial decisions, creating a body of legal precedent that could guide future proceedings. Roman law's flexibility and adaptability allowed it to serve diverse populations across a vast empire while maintaining essential principles of fairness and consistency. This adaptability was achieved not by abandoning fundamental principles, but by developing sophisticated methods for applying those principles to novel situations and changing circumstances. The ability to balance consistency with flexibility was one of the key factors that made Roman law both stable and dynamic. The Roman understanding of punishment as education reflects their belief that crime often resulted from ignorance, poor judgment, or lack of proper moral formation rather than fundamental evil or incorrigible character flaws. This optimistic view of human nature led to punishment practices that emphasized learning and improvement rather than simple retribution, creating opportunities for offenders to understand the consequences of their actions and develop better patterns of behavior. Roman legal education emphasized not only technical knowledge of laws and procedures, but also the cultivation of wisdom, integrity, and commitment to justice. Roman lawyers and judges were expected to be not merely skilled technicians, but moral leaders who could inspire respect for law and legal institutions through their own character and behavior. This comprehensive approach to legal education helped to create a legal profession that could maintain high standards of competence and integrity over generations. The Roman concept of gravitas, serious dignity, and moral weight influenced every aspect of their legal culture and helps explain why Roman legal proceedings had such lasting impact on participants and observers. Romans understood that law was too important to be treated casually or superficially, and they designed their legal institutions and procedures to reflect the gravity and significance of the issues being addressed. Roman punishment practices often included opportunities for public acknowledgement of wrongdoing and commitment to future good behavior, reflecting their understanding that genuine justice required not only appropriate consequences for past actions, but also realistic prospects for future improvement. These opportunities for public redemption served important social functions, helping to restore confidence in both individual offenders and the legal system as a whole. The Roman approach to different types of crime and corresponding punishments reveals their sophisticated understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. They recognized that different types of wrongdoing required different types of response, and that effective punishment must be carefully calibrated to address the specific nature of each offense while serving broader social purposes of deterrence, education, and reform. Roman law's influence on subsequent legal development demonstrates the lasting value of their insights into fundamental questions about justice, human nature, and social organization. Many features of modern legal systems can be traced back to Roman innovations, suggesting that Romans achieved genuine understanding of enduring truths about law and justice that remain relevant across different cultures and historical periods. As the evening deepens and the warm glow of oil lamps creates an atmosphere of peaceful contemplation. Your reflection on the Roman legal culture has evolved into a form of meditation on the eternal questions that all human societies must address. How can we live together in peace and harmony? What do we owe to one another as members of a shared community? How can we respond to wrongdoing in ways that promote justice, healing, and growth, rather than simply perpetuating cycles of harm and retribution? The Roman answers to these questions were not perfect, but they were thoughtful, sophisticated, and deeply humane. Their commitment to reason, fairness, and human dignity created legal institutions that served their society well and provided models that continue to influence legal development today. Their understanding that law must serve not only practical purposes, but also higher ideals of justice and human flourishing represents an achievement that deserves respect and admiration from any thoughtful observer. The gentle sounds of evening in ancient Rome, the distant murmur of conversation, the soft footsteps of citizens making their way home, the whisper of wind through the columns of the basilica create a soundscape that invites deeper relaxation and peaceful reflection. The day's legal proceedings have concluded, justice has been served, and the eternal city settles into the quiet rhythms of evening rest and contemplation. Roman families gathering for their evening meals, sharing food and conversation in the warm glow of home fires, represent the ultimate purpose of all legal institutions, the protection and nurturing of human community in all its forms. The complex systems of law and punishment that Romans developed were ultimately designed to serve this simple but profound goal of enabling people to live together in peace, dignity, and mutual respect. As you prepare to leave the basilica and the world of Roman legal culture behind, you carry with you not only knowledge of specific punishment practices, but also appreciation for the wisdom, humanity, and moral vision that characterized Roman civilization at its best. This deeper understanding provides a foundation for continued reflection on questions of justice, punishment, and social organization that remain as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago in ancient Rome. The basilica has now settled into the profound quiet of evening, with only the gentle flicker of oil lamps casting soft, dancing shadows across the ancient marble. The last echoes of legal proceedings have faded into memory, leaving behind an atmosphere of deep tranquility that seems to embrace you like a warm, comfortable blanket. This is the time when the mind naturally turns from active engagement with the complexities of law and justice toward the simpler, more fundamental rhythms of rest and peaceful contemplation. The wisdom of Roman legal culture, with all its sophisticated approaches to crime and punishment, begins to merge into a broader appreciation for the eternal human quest for fairness, harmony, and understanding. As you allow yourself to sink deeper into the comfortable embrace of this ancient space, the specific details of cases and penalties fade into a more general sense of gratitude for the thoughtful, humane approach that Romans brought to some of life's most challenging questions. The Roman concept of odium, leisure time devoted to contemplation and reflection, provides the perfect framework for this transition from active learning to peaceful rest. Romans understood that the mind needed periods of quiet reflection to process complex information, and integrate new understanding into existing knowledge. This natural rhythm of engagement and rest was built into Roman daily life and helps explain why their civilization was able to sustain such high levels of intellectual and cultural achievement over such long periods. In the gentle glow of lamplight, the marble columns and decorative elements of the basilica seemed to take on an almost ethereal quality, as if the ancient stones themselves were imbued with the wisdom and dignity of countless generations of Romans who sought justice and truth within these walls. The careful proportions and harmonious design of Roman architecture were intended to promote exactly this kind of peaceful, contemplative state of mind that naturally leads to rest and renewal. The Roman understanding of sleep as a sacred time when the soul could commune with divine wisdom provides a beautiful context for allowing your mind to drift toward rest. Romans believed that dreams could provide guidance, insight, and connection to truths that were not accessible during waking hours. This reverent attitude toward sleep and dreams transformed the simple biological necessity of rest into something approaching a spiritual practice. Roman households prepared for sleep with rituals that honored both the practical and spiritual dimensions of rest. Family members would gather to share final conversations of the day, offer prayers to household gods, and ensure that all was secure and peaceful before surrendering to sleep. These evening rituals created a sense of closure and completion that made the transition to rest feel natural and appropriate. The Roman practice of reflecting on the day's events before sleep was influenced by Stoic philosophy, which taught that evening reflection could help individuals learn from their experiences and prepare for better choices in the future. This habit of gentle, non judgmental review of daily events provides a perfect model for allowing your own reflections on Roman legal culture to settle into peaceful understanding. The scents that would have filled a Roman home in the evening, olive oil burning in lamps, herbs and flowers from garden courtyards, the lingering aromas of the evening meal create a sensory environment that naturally promotes relaxation and peaceful transition toward sleep. These natural fragrances were believed to have therapeutic properties that could calm the mind and prepare the body for restorative rest. Roman beds were designed for both comfort and dignity, with soft mattresses supported by rope or leather webbing and covered with linen sheets and woolen blankets that provided warmth without weight. The Romans understood that physical comfort was important for mental peace and that the quality of sleep could profoundly affect both health and mental clarity. This attention to the details of rest reflects their broader commitment to human dignity and well being. The Roman practice of meditation on virtues such as justice, wisdom, courage, and temperance provided a natural bridge between active engagement with complex issues and the peaceful emptiness of sleep. These virtues were not abstract concepts, but living realities that could be contemplated and internalized through quiet reflection. Thinking about justice as you prepare for sleep connects your rest to the highest human aspirations and ideals. Roman gardens, with their carefully arranged herbs, flowers, and fruit trees, were designed to engage all the senses and promote peaceful contemplation, the gentle sound of water flowing through fountains, the soft rustle of leaves in evening breezes, and the subtle fragrances of jasmine and lavender created natural environments that seemed designed by the gods themselves to promote rest and restoration. These garden spaces were often adjacent to bedrooms, allowing the peaceful sounds and sense of nature to accompany the transition to sleep. The Roman understanding of time as cyclical rather than linear provided a comforting framework for understanding both daily rest and the larger rhythms of life. Just as each day naturally progressed from dawn through midday to evening and night, so too did human life follow natural patterns of activity and rest, engagement and reflection, learning and integration. This cyclical understanding helped Romans accept the natural rhythms of life without anxiety or resistance. Roman evening prayers often included expressions of gratitude for the day's blessings and requests for peaceful sleep and divine protection through the hours of darkness. These prayers connected individual rest to the larger cosmic order and provided assurance that sleep was not a vulnerable time, but a sacred period under divine care and protection. This spiritual dimension of sleep transformed rest from mere physical necessity into an act of trust and faith. The Roman concept of pax, peace, was understood not simply as the absence of conflict, but as a positive state of harmony, balance, and right relationship between all elements of life. This deeper understanding of peace provides the perfect goal for your own transition toward sleep, not merely the cessation of mental activity, but the achievement of genuine harmony between mind, body, and spirit. Roman families often shared stories in the evening hours before sleep, passing down wisdom, values, and cultural memory from one generation to the next. These storytelling traditions created bonds of connection and continuity that helped individuals feel part of something larger than themselves. Your own journey through Roman legal culture today has been a form of storytelling that connects you to the wisdom and experience of this remarkable civilization. The Roman practice of honoring ancestors and household gods before sleep reflected their understanding that rest was not simply a personal matter, but was connected to family, community, and divine relationships that extended across time and space. This broader perspective on sleep as part of a larger web of relationships provides comfort and security that makes peaceful rest easier to achieve. Roman physicians understood the connection between mental tranquility and physical health, prescribing practices that would promote both peaceful sleep and overall well being. These might include gentle exercises, herbal teas, warm baths, and meditation on pleasant thoughts or beautiful memories. The integration of mental and physical approaches to health reflects Roman wisdom about the unity of human nature and the importance of addressing all dimensions of human experience. The Roman appreciation for beauty in all its forms, architecture, art, literature, music, and nature, was based on their understanding that beautiful environments could profoundly affect human mood, thought, and behavior. The beautiful spaces where you have spent this day contemplating Roman legal culture were designed to promote exactly the kind of peaceful, elevated state of mind that naturally leads to restorative sleep. Roman concepts of dignity and respect extended even to the realm of sleep and dreams, with the understanding that rest was not a sign of weakness or laziness, but an essential component of a life lived with wisdom and balance. This respectful attitude toward rest helps create the mental conditions necessary for truly peaceful and restorative sleep. The Roman tradition of philosophical reflection emphasized the importance of understanding one's place in the larger order of existence and finding peace through acceptance of natural rhythms and limitations. This philosophical perspective provides a foundation for approaching sleep not as an interruption of life, but as an essential part of the natural order that deserves to be embraced with gratitude and trust. Roman evening rituals often included the dimming of lights and the gradual reduction of activity and stimulation, creating a natural progression toward rest that honored the body's need for preparation and transition. This gradual approach to sleep recognizes that the mind and body need time to shift from active engagement with the world to the passive receptivity that characterizes healthy sleep. The Roman understanding of dreams as potentially meaningful communications from divine sources created a respectful and anticipatory attitude toward sleep that made the transition to rest feel like an adventure rather than simply an interruption of consciousness. This positive attitude toward dreams and sleep helps create the mental conditions necessary for peaceful rest and potentially meaningful dream experiences. Roman homes were designed with quiet, private spaces specifically designated for rest and contemplation, recognizing that peaceful sleep required environments that were protected from the distractions and disturbances of daily life. The careful attention to creating appropriate environments for rest reflects Roman understanding of the importance of sleep for both individual well being and social harmony. The Roman practice of ending the day with expressions of gratitude and positive reflection helped create mental and emotional conditions that were conducive to peaceful sleep. This practice of focusing on positive experiences and accomplishments rather than worries or problems provides a model for preparing your own mind for rest after this day of contemplating Roman wisdom. Roman concepts of justice and harmony extended to their understanding of the proper balance between activity and rest, work and leisure, engagement and withdrawal. This balanced approach to life recognizes that sustainable well being requires attention to all aspects of human nature and creates conditions for long term health and happiness. The Roman appreciation for silence and quiet as positive qualities rather than simply the absence of sound reflects their understanding that peace and rest require not just the removal of disturbances, but the cultivation of positive conditions that promote tranquility and restoration. This deeper understanding of peace and quiet provides guidance for creating the mental conditions necessary for truly restorative sleep. Roman evening meals were often followed by periods of quiet conversation, reading, or contemplation that helped family members transition gradually from the active engagement of daily life toward the peaceful receptivity of sleep. This natural progression honors the body's need for gradual transition and helps ensure that sleep comes naturally and peacefully. The Roman understanding of sleep as a time when the soul could travel to other realms and commune with divine wisdom created an attitude of anticipation and respect toward rest that transformed sleep from mere biological necessity into spiritual opportunity. This elevated understanding of sleep's significance helps create the reverent attitude that promotes truly peaceful and restorative rest. As the oil lamps burn lower and their gentle glow becomes even softer and more peaceful, you find yourself naturally drawn toward the deep, restorative rest that the Romans understood as one of life's great blessings. The wisdom and beauty of Roman legal culture, with all its sophisticated approaches to justice and human dignity, provides a foundation of peace and understanding that makes restful sleep feel like a natural and appropriate conclusion to this day of contemplation. The gentle sounds of evening in ancient Rome, the distant murmur of night watchmen making their rounds, the soft footsteps of citizens returning to their homes, the whisper of wind through the cypress trees create a soundscape that invites complete relaxation and surrender to the natural rhythms of rest and restoration. Roman families gathering in their homes for the final rituals of the day, sharing quiet conversations and preparing for sleep in the warm glow of home fires, represent the ultimate purpose of all human institutions and endeavors, the creation of conditions where people can live together in peace, dignity, and mutual care. The complex systems of law and justice that you have contemplated today ultimately serve this simple but profound goal of enabling human flourishing in all its forms. As you allow yourself to be embraced by the profound peace and tranquility of this ancient space, you carry with you not only knowledge of Roman legal practices, but also appreciation for the deeper wisdom about human nature, social harmony, and the requirements of justice that characterized this remarkable civilization. This understanding provides a foundation of peace and confidence that makes restful sleep feel like a natural blessing rather than simply a biological necessity. The eternal wisdom of Roman civilization, with its commitment to reason, dignity, and justice, continues to whisper its insights across the centuries, offering guidance and inspiration to all who seek to understand the deepest truths about human nature and social life. As you surrender to sleep in this sacred space of ancient wisdom, you become part of that eternal conversation between past and present, between human aspiration and divine truth, between the complexity of daily life and the simple peace of rest and restoration. Sleep now comes naturally and peacefully, like a gentle river flowing toward the sea, carrying with it all the insights and understanding of this day, while leaving behind the peace and tranquility that Romans understood as one of the greatest blessings of civilized life. In this sacred space of ancient wisdom, surrounded by the eternal truths of justice and human dignity, rest comes as a gift from the gods themselves, a time of restoration and renewal that prepares the soul for whatever challenges and opportunities tomorrow may bring. The marble columns stand as eternal sentinels of wisdom and justice, watching over your peaceful rest with the same dignity and care that they have provided to countless generations of seekers after truth and understanding. In their silent presence, all is well, all is peaceful, and all is exactly as it should be in the eternal order of existence that Romans understood as the foundation of all true knowledge and lasting peace.